New Zealand SAS selection. This is part 2. If you guys like this, put part 3 in the comments and I'll do it. Let's go.
It's the next phase of selection for New Zealand's elite SAS unit. Those who survive the physical challenges of day 1 now face a far tougher test.
Biggest challenge on our selection course is the 2nd, 3rd and 4th days.
Like SAS troopers operating behind enemy lines, the volunteers must navigate a route back to base via a series of checkpoints. Deceptively simple, open country navigation will prove the downfall of most on selection.
Also, that's the isolation factor, minimal communication, and of course it's controlled in terms of how much sleep and food they get.
The effect?
Land navigation is a big problem for everybody. I don't know what it is, if people don't know how to read maps today or what, but when I was in the Marine Corps a long time ago, land nav was a problem. Today it's even worse, and I don't care if it's Marine Corps officers or these guys in SAS selection. It is tough for people. If they don't know how to read a map and get an azimuth and look at the topography, especially and something's wide open. In the woods, typically, it's equally tough, but if there's a ravine, a stream, an elevation point, it makes the process a lot easier, but this looks like it's pretty much the same kind of country, which would be tough.
Effects of food and sleep deprivation and strength-sapping pack work are intended to play havoc with their ability to function. Reading a map proves a struggle.
What's your distance? 3.6. How long do you reckon taking? 1 hour, 12 minutes done.
But there is absolutely no help from those observing.
There's no encouragement on the selection course because the individual has to be self-motivated.
The NZSAS seek men who can think on their feet and operate alone. For some, this lack of guidance causes unexpected pressure, which increases as the pace hots up.
A lot of people know they've got a certain amount of time, so that often weighs on people's mind. If they make an incorrect route choice, that often plays quite heavily.
When you look at A to B, it might be the most direct and fast, but you need to go A through D and E to get to B.
My nav wasn't so.
Yeah, there's no cheating on this kind of thing, right? You're going to get to the points. You got to usually get initials at the points, and you got to get there in the time. I've done this type of thing, and day land nav sucks, and night sucks even worse. If you guys done that before, put that in the comments, and which was the worst to you?
Hot. The thing I did was made sure I was quick on my feet, so if I made an error, I could make it up.
Sadly, even some of the more experienced soldiers have not had enough instruction or practice at navigation.
They know they've made a mistake, and then people start thinking, I'm behind. How far behind am I? What am I really doing out here? Is this getting too tough?
Once you've fallen behind in time, it's difficult to make it up.
You're put in a position where a lot of people are thinking about quitting.
And then they start that self-doubt process.
And that's where people start to drop out.
It's an unceremonial departure from selection for those who have given up.
That 2nd, 3rd and 4th day is where we have the highest attrition rates.
As the days blur together in the navigational phase, the volunteers struggle with the debilitating effects of sleep deprivation.
We keep them occupied and awake because we also meter out the amount of sleep that they have.
Tired.
And the worst thing they can do is if you get somewhere and you got an hour's sleep. Because if you've been doing this 3 days and you lay down, your feet start swelling, your knees start swelling. So the key is take your boots off, elevate your feet and your legs, because if you do it, everything starts swelling and aching. So staying moving, sleep standing up, anything you can do to keep the blood flowing, because that will really be a downfall.
Despite an increasingly fragile emotional state, they must maintain the highest levels of soldiering.
They're not normally carrying their rifle with 2 hands on the weapon, ready for use. It'll be frowned upon.
The grind of hard days take their toll.
Timings are harder and the food is less, and people push themselves further and harder each day until they just blow.
Head down, a bit moping, maybe look like they're doubting themselves.
By now, even basic navigation is a challenge in concentration.
It becomes very mental, especially towards the end, because you're not getting food and you're not getting sleep.
And that is tough because your eyes start blurring. You're trying to see this map, protractor, get an azimuth, pay attention. Because if you miss something, it's like driving when you're tired. You miss the turn, you turn around, no big deal when you're driving. You miss the turn here, there's no time to make it up.
Your body keeps going. I mean, the body's a pretty amazing thing. The pain is here.
Physically, mentally and emotionally low, more and more volunteers fall further behind. Origins. In 1940, Hitler was winning the battle for North Africa. Germany had forced Britain into desperate retreat. The British retaliation would not be through conventional airstrikes or using divisions of Allied tanks. Instead, it would come from a small British land unit that targeted enemy supply lines and stationary aircraft in hit-and-run raids. This was the birth of the SAS, the Special Air Service, the brainchild of a brilliant Scots Guard, Lieutenant David Stirling.
And this was the birth of quite a few of the airborne type troops in World War II for the U.S., obviously the UK, and later on the New Zealand SAS in 55.
Large raids lacked the necessary element of surprise, so Stirling devised a plan involving small groups of highly trained and superbly motivated men with more than a touch of maverick.
Small groups inserted behind the enemy lines. They could inflict damage quite out of proportion to the number of people involved.
Even their name, the Special Air Service, was designed to fool German intelligence that the attacks were from large air divisions. The SAS soon linked up with another motorized commando raiding party called the Long Range Desert Group, or the LRDG. Only 100 men strong, the LRDG was stacked with New Zealand soldiers.
He knew what could be done, they would do it.
Like the SAS, the LRDG's methods were unconventional and missions clandestine.
It wasn't normal for the Long Range Desert Group to wear any insignia that indicated who they were. A shirt, a singlet, a pair of shorts, mountain climbing boots, and socks. That was their uniform. And a smile.
Together, the SAS and LRDG travelled across the deserts, wreaking havoc against the enemy.
Shooting up convoys, blowing up dumps when they found them, and raiding airfields. But they say that the SAS and the Long Range Desert Group destroyed more planes on the ground than the Air Force did in the whole of the Egyptian campaign.
North Africa was New Zealand's introduction to the SAS. It would be the start of an enduring relationship, which today sees a new generation of hopefuls aspiring to join. And as the...
Well, these new guys have history to help them. So the first group of SAS guys probably were able to give to the next generation and so forth. So what you get from all these generations is lesson learned, which means don't do these 20 things, only do these 5. Makes a big difference the longer these units are around, in failed battles in particular.
The navigational phase moves into its final day. Weary bodies rebel under the relentless pack marching.
I got major blisters, my feet were majorly swollen to the point that a few days into the selection I couldn't take my boots off, or else I'd never be able to put them back on again.
For those crippled by their exertions, bright red panels on their packs ensure easy pickups when aerial rescue becomes necessary.
There's no way to train for this. Either you can deal with the straps cutting into your shoulders, you can deal with the sore feet, or you can't. Some people just can't. They have a very low tolerance for it. Their body gives out sooner. Where some guys, you look at their feet, you don't know how they're still walking.
As the casualties mount, the numbers still in contention fall. These hardy few are now running on empty.
People are going, well, if this is how I feel at this stage, I'm not going to make it.
Injuries, exhaustion, and a loss of willpower mean this is the moment of truth.
I mean, it's a young man's game, right? There's not many 40-year-olds that are going to do this. probably quite frankly, at 30, it's going to be tough. That's why they want the young studs to be doing this, because they can take the beating, and it's not the beating, it's the next day what happens, right? How do they recover?
For 3 days on end, hungry and tired, they've marched with crippling loads. And then the navigation phase is over. For many, it's been a test of endurance.
I think the pain was all over. The pain was all over your body.
Followed. Many realise their SAS dream is over.
Sort of sitting down going, is this really for me? What do I get out of it? Why am I doing it?
Throughout the long night, knowing what lies ahead becomes too much for fragile psyches. A trickle of withdrawals becomes a flood.
If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. For my current subscribers, I appreciate you. Thanks for watching.